In the high-stakes world of NASCAR, Chad Knaus stands out as a legendary figure. As recent controversies about racing part modifications emerge, the famous Chad Knaus, known for his dedication and keen eye for detail, is now in the spotlight. With 7 championships as Jimmie Johnson's crew chief and now the vice president of competition at Hendrick Motorsports, Chad is responsible for overseeing the team's performance and ensuring adherence to NASCAR's strict technical regulations. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the intricate details of the ongoing controversy, exploring its implications for both Chad and the entire NASCAR community. We will also discuss Chad's heated response to the allegations as he openly confronts NASCAR. Make sure to watch until the end to see how this intriguing story unfolds and learn about the potential outcomes for everyone involved. In response to these penalties, Chad has come out with a fiery statement that is sure to turn heads. Chad has put the blame on NASCAR and single-source suppliers, stating that they are responsible for the non-compliance issues with the hood louvers. He has vigorously defended Hendrick Motorsports' reputation as a team that consistently adheres to NASCAR's technical regulations and has expressed his belief that the penalties are unjustified. Hendrick Motorsports announced their decision to appeal in a statement. Chad, the vice president of competition, spoke with the media on Friday at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Using passionate language, he expressed his disappointment and frustration. "I think it's a terrible situation, not only for us, but the industry, to be quite honest with you," Chad declared. He continued, "I think that's what I dislike the most. It's ugly. We shouldn't be in this situation, and it's really unfortunate that we are, because it doesn't help anybody." Chad went on to explain the issue, saying, "We as a company, we in the garage, every one of these teams here are being held accountable to put their car out there to go through inspection and perform at the level they need to. The teams are being held accountable for doing that." However, he pointed out that the problem lies with the single-source providers. Nobody is holding the single-source providers accountable at the level that they need to be to give us the parts we need. That goes through NASCAR's distribution center and NASCAR's approval process to get those parts, and we're not getting the right parts. Chad expressed his disappointment with the overall state of the sport, saying, "There's so many areas that we've got to continue to improve upon." Chad highlighted that teams are held responsible for ensuring their cars pass inspection and meet performance standards. However, the real problem seems to stem from the single-source providers responsible for supplying the parts needed by the teams. According to Chad, these providers have not been held to the same level of accountability as the teams themselves. The situation is worsened by the fact that NASCAR's distribution center and approval process are involved in obtaining these parts, and they are not delivering the right components to the teams. Chad emphasized that there are numerous areas within the sport that need improvement, and he expressed his disappointment that this issue has arisen despite efforts to work collectively as a group. This issue is causing trouble not only for Hendrick Motorsports, but for the entire world of racing. Chad is really concerned about the situation and feels that things need to change. He's been quite vocal about his frustration with the current state of affairs and believes that there's a lot of room for improvement. Elton Sawyer, the NASCAR senior vice president of competition, shared his insights earlier this week regarding the modification of hood louvers. He stated that it was evident that these parts had undergone changes in an area that hadn't been approved. Sawyer explained, "It was obvious to us that these parts had been modified in an area that wasn't approved. This is a consistent penalty with what we went through last year." He added that maintaining a level playing field in the garage and keeping the competition where it needs to be was of utmost importance. The discussions surrounding this car in the previous year and the collaboration with the owners to determine the appropriate deterrent model led to the decision to impose a penalty. Sawyer placed a strong emphasis on the situation that led to their decision. He explained that they felt compelled to issue a penalty as there seemed to be no other viable course of action. When questioned about whether these modifications could potentially have an impact on downforce, Sawyer refrained from discussing the intent behind the changes. However, he did acknowledge that it was reasonable to assume that there could be performance implications associated with the alterations made to the vehicle. In a recent development, Hendrick Motorsports has cited documented inconsistent and unclear communication by the sanctioning body specifically related to louvers. To shed some light on this issue, Chad shared his perspective on the matter. He said, "We submitted a part through Chevrolet to NASCAR, and then NASCAR chose the single-source provider for those components. The components haven't been coming the way we expected them to be for a couple of the manufacturers, as far as I know in the garage. So we started to have dialogue with NASCAR in early February about those problems." Chad went on to describe the complex communication process between Hendrick Motorsports, Chevrolet, and NASCAR. "It was us, through our aerodynamic department, through Chevrolet, back through NASCAR, back to us, and back to Chevrolet. There's a significant amount of communication that has been had. It's definitely confusing. The timelines are curious, but they are there." Chad explained that their cars typically undergo a voluntary inspection at the track after completing the mandatory engine inspection and safety inspection. This occurs shortly after the garage opens for the race weekend. At Phoenix on March 10, the Hendrick cars followed this standard procedure. According to Chad, the purpose of the voluntary inspection is to give NASCAR the opportunity to point out any potential issues or suggest modifications to the cars. He noted that this has been the standard practice for their team. However, Hendrick Motorsports stated that the louvers were not inspected until 4 hours after going through the voluntary inspection. Chad was unsure why NASCAR didn't take action immediately. "It's really confusing," he said. Chad expressed his disappointment, saying, "We knew that there was some attention to that area when we first went through technical inspection. That's what is really disappointing to me, quite honestly, is that we had plenty of time to get the parts off the car if we felt something was wrong." He went on to explain that if the team had been aware of the impending 4-hour delay and had suspected that something was amiss with the components, they would have taken measures to dispose of the parts in a manner that would prevent anyone from ever discovering them. For example, burning them with fuel in a trash can. When questioned about whether the components in question were defective or if Hendrick Motorsports had altered them in a way they thought would be in compliance with NASCAR regulations, Chad provided a response. He stated, "We currently have a completely new set of these particular components readily available, which we can retrieve from the shelf at any moment. However, NASCAR has deemed these parts as unlawful and unsuitable for usage in a race." Furthermore, Chad mentioned during the same conversation that the team was not yet informed about a specific date for the upcoming appeal they were planning to make. NASCAR has imposed hefty penalties on Hendrick Motorsports. Each of the 4 crew chiefs involved was fined a staggering $100,000. Additionally, drivers Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, and William Byron, along with their respective teams and the number 9 team, were each penalized 100 points and 10 playoff points. The situation has raised many questions and ignited debates within the racing community. What do you think of Chad's protest about the inspection process and the penalties imposed on Hendrick Motorsports? Do you believe the team modified the parts intentionally, or was it a misunderstanding? How will this affect the team's performance and reputation in the future? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to NASCAR Today for more racing news and discussions.